Hello everyone, and in this video I'm going to be explaining every single line of this program. This program is nearly 300 kilobytes, so your goal is to not fall asleep. If you can finish all the way to the end, comment, I guess. Line 1. Line 1 declares the variable or constant that is this version to be 2.29.2, which is a string. Number 2. This declares snapshot to be the boolean false. 3 snapshot version is 4. Line 4 is the assembled version is a format string of basic utilities with sys version. So print basic utilities 2.99.2. And line 5, it's an if statement. If snapshot is true, then assembled version will add to it beta snapshot version. So if it was a snapshot, it would be basic utilities 2.29.2 beta and then snapshot version. Line 7 is empty, probably just to separate the initial variable declaration with the start of the actual program. This begins by printing assembled version, followed by a copyright. In line 9, it prints initialize, ending with a character return, so the next line will overwrite the previous one. Line 10 is the first library import, which is the OS library. 11 runs nothing on os.system, which is like running something on a command prompt. In this case, it runs nothing, and this is to, well, initialize ANSI. Line 12 imports the Kinter message box as NTK to be able to make some message boxes that don't have the annoying little window. And line number 13 is the declaration of the function top level error that accepts the arguments message and title that is defaulted to error. Line 14 is title equals string title, which makes sure the title you've inputted is converted to a string. On line 15 is the same thing, but for the message. 16 initializes a tkinter window under the local variable root. Line 17 sets the attributes of said root to topmost, which keeps it on top of the screen, hence the top level error on line 13. 18 withdraws the annoying little window, and 19 shows the message box with title and message. Line 20 is blank to separate the function's top level error and the console ask function on line 21. Line 21 is the start of the function console ask message, which returns a boolean. Line 22 is the beginning of an expanded docstring. Line 23 is the content of said docstring, and line 24 is the closing statement. Line 25 is the beginning of a well true, which means it will loop forever until broken. Line 26 for the local variable xkl is the input string message and yes no. Line 27, if the value input into xkl starts with y, then it returns true in line 28. Line 28 returns true, and line 29 breaks the loop. But that is probably completely, I think the word may be redundant, because return breaks all loops. So with line 29 being a useless line of code, line 30 does the same thing as line 27, but it tests if it starts with n. In this case, no. And because of that, on line 31, it returns false, and it breaks the loop on line 32. Line 33 is the else statement if it doesn't match up with y or n. It prints invalid and begins the loop again. Line 35 is empty. Line 36 is the beginning of an exception handling try statement, and it tries to import the PyTube library or all known subcombinations of it. On line 37. 38, if it doesn't find said library or any exception, it will print an error on line 39, and it will print the exception and will probably say an error has occurred, module not found. 40 is the same as 36, except it imports keyboard, and 42, and this is all the same. So line 45 is import URL lib, 49 is awesome progress bar, and 53 is term color. And in the case of term color, the line after line 55, which is the error printing, it sets the variable has tc to false, and if it is found, it sets has tc to true. Line 59 is once again completely useless, probably separating the optional libraries with the rest of the program. Now these upcoming libraries are standard. Line 60 is traceback and imports the format TB function. 61 imports sys, 62 imports JSON, 63 imports collections, and 64 attempts to import psutil using line 65. Line 66 is the except for that, and line 67 is that it could not be found. And it's telling you to run checkdependencies.py, which is available on the GitHub repository. Line 68 has absolutely nothing on it, and line 69 initializes the colors, which is done by running the plain OS system color. Line 70 is the variable info is info, warn is warn, error is error, and fatal is fatal on line 70, 71, 72, and 73 respectively. Line 74 is a definition statement of the log, which accepts stuff to log and the level which is defaulted to info. And if the level is info, then L is info on line 75 and 76, 77. If the level is warn, then line 78, L is warn. Line 79, if level is error, 80, L is error. 81, if level is fatal, then 82, L is fatal. And 83 is the beginning of a try. 84 attempts to open log 000.log in the current working directory with append plus, which means it appends to the current file, and if it can't find it, it creates it. Line 85 is empty for unknown reasons, probably because I'm too lazy to remove unnecessary new lines. Line 86 writes stir, datetime.datetime.now. So what it essentially does is it prints off the stuff. It prints the level and the current date. Line 87 closes it. And if there's a permission error on line 88 except, then 89 raises the runtime error, access is denied. And line 90 begins the handle exception, which accepts type value traceback. This function is actually initialized to be the default exception handler for the entire thing. 91 sets the assembled version to a global variable, even though it already is. Line 92 tests if it is subclass and type keyboard interrupt, which I found on Stack Overflow and have no clue what it does. Line 93 passes and does absolutely nothing if it's a keyboard interrupt. Line 94 is an else, and line 95 is if the platform is Windows, then line 96 clears the screen with the Windows command. Line 97 is an else and assumes you're on Unix, and 98 clears it using the Unix Linux command. And on line 99, it sets the color to blue with white text. And line 100 is completely empty, a big ruin for such an important line milestone. Line 101 formats the traceback using the format TB and sets it to local variable L. Line 102 sets X to a blank variable, which is very unknown. 103 iterates through all the items in L, and then adds the item, and then adds a new line to X in lines 104 and 105 respectively. I could probably combine these two lines, but I make so many bad design choices, I just didn't. Line 106 is the beginning of a try. Line 107 attempts to log that there has been an error with some details. Line 108 is an accept, so if that doesn't work, and of course, maybe being a bad design choice, it doesn't have any specific values. Line 109, it does absolutely nothing. Line 110 is blank, once again for unknown reasons. Line 111 prints a frowny face, and then new line, blah, 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 blah. Line 112 prints this string here. Line 113 makes a crash types variable with all of these different little crash statements here. And then 14 is initializes a global variables list by making a list of the items. Line 115 is creating the creating crash report. Line 116 is a try statement. Line 117 checks if it is the path is dir crash reports, and if it's not, then it triggers. And line 118 creates a directory crash reports in the current directory if it is not found. Line 119 is an open, which opens the crash report and some stuff about the date, time, and all that, and it opens as a variable f. Line 120 writes base utilities crash port new line to said file. Line 121 writes a random choice from this previous crash types variable assigned on line 113. 122 writes the current working directory when it crashed. 123 writes the platform. 124 writes the platform version, which is the OS version, in this case Windows 10. Line 125 writes the version of base utilities that you're using. In this case, it is 2.29.2. Line 126 begins the iteration of everything in the list of vars, which was initialized further up there somewhere, and actually line 114, and it contains every variable that has been assigned. Line 127 is an f.write statement with the string of the first item, which contains the variable name. 128 writes the space, colon, space. Line 129 writes the value of said variable, and 130 writes a new line, leaving it so every item for every variable, a new line is created with the variable's name and value. Then after the loop is exited, line 131 writes end of crash report. Now, if it could not do anything crash report related in the except statement 132, 133 prints failed to create crash report to the console. And then no matter what happens, line 134 prints crash report and variable done complete. 135 deletes the vars variable because it is taking up a lot of unnecessary memory. And line 136 is an input statement telling you to press enter or return to exit. Line 137 sets the color back to normal black and white, in case you're using it like straight from the command line. And of course, if you're on Unix, the colors will not change at all. Line 138 is absolutely nothing, yet it maintains the indents from previous. Line 139 is out of the function and imports everything into tkinter. This is completely useless. Oh, pardon me. The original importing of tkinter TK is useless because of this, but yet I kept it in anyway, and I probably import tkinter 5 or 6 times. This is line 139. 140 is the beginning of the function getPixelColor, which accepts X or Y, which are integers. First thing it does is try to globalize background, and if it can't find that, it does absolutely nothing. Lines 141 to 144. Line 145 is a comment because I totally didn't copy this from somewhere. As I was saying, line 146 minuses or inverts Y. Line 147 is nothing. Line 148 is a comment. Line 149 gets canvas. Line 150 is nothing. Line 151 is a comment. Line 152 makes IDs, canvas, find overlapping, blah, 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 blah. Line 153 is nothing. 154 is a comment. Line 155 is if IDs is true. Then line 156 is a comment. 157 is gets the ID of the last object topmost. Totally didn't read that from the previous line. 158 is nothing. 159 is get its color. 160 gets its color, which I totally didn't read from line 159. Line 161 is nothing once again. Line 162 is a comment. 163 tests if color is true, and if it is, 164 returns color. 165 is nothing. 162 if there was no object, blah, 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 blah. 167 tries to return the background on 168. If it can't, 169, then it returns default color of 170. Line 170, which is white. This color here is white. Line 171, it tests if snapshot is true. If it is, 172 is the beginning of a try statement, which term color C prints warning you are using base blah blah blah, and it prints this in yellow. And if it can't do that because the term color library is not found, line 174, 175 just prints it the same message or similar message but without the color. 176 contains absolutely nothing. Line 177 imports the tar file library. 178 imports the datetime library. And 179 declares the system exception hook to be the handle exception function defined up here. Line 180 has absolutely nothing. Line 181, try line 182, import WinSound, which tries to import the WinSound library, but said library is not found on any non-Windows device, which is why it's called Win in WinSound. If it can be found, line 183, line 184 says that it cannot support it. Line 185 is nothing. Line 186 imports OS for the second time. Line 187 is nothing. Line 188 imports web browser. 189, nothing. 190, platform. I don't know if I already did that. Line 191, nothing. 192 imports random. 193 attempts to do line 194, which imports version from packaging. And if it can't do that, line 195, 196 will print the update command will not work, and probably some other command too. Actually, I think it's just update. Also declares the has pkg variable to be false in 197. And if it is found, line 198, 199 is has package is true. 200 and 201 are both empty, and from 202 is from time import sleep. Line 203 is the beginning of another try statement with 204 from placesound import placesound. And if it can't be found, line 205, line 206 is your device does not support placesound. Blah, 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 blah. 207, nothing. 208, import turtle this time. 209, nothing. 210, it imports threading. From 211, declares the reckons variable to be false. 212, 213 are empty. 214 is from Tkin to import file dialog. 215, nothing. 216 imports Qtip. 217, nothing. 218 imports subprocess now. 219 does nothing again. Now, line 220 to 227 or 226 is the original variable declaration statement from very old versions, which was 220 is the SW is false. 221 is game is played equals 0 from the 1.8 Snakes and Ladders update. Game is 1, 222 also from that same update. Both are set to 0. 223 sets pied through 14, even though it's more like 3.14159265358 blah 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 blah. 224 is hasarg equals true, and 225 is playing2 is false, and 226 is hasarg is true. 227 sets the variable PID to the os.get PID, which is process ID. 228 is mercifully empty, and 229 defines force kill variable function ID with no arguments. 230 logs the program has stopped with exit code 0, even though that may not always be the case. 231 globalizes PID, and 232 task kills it through the use of taskkill/f/PID, and it will retrieve the PID, and /t, which I forget what it means. It probably means right now. And the next line, 233, is the beginning of force kill NL, which is the exact same, except it doesn't log. So that's lines 233 to 235. 236 is the beginning of yet another try statement. 237 sets the arguments to sys.argv, which took a long time to do it. 238 sets the open file dir to arguments to the second statement in argument, and 239 sets xxx to arguments 2. And if it doesn't do that, usually because of an out of range index, hasarg is false because there are no special arguments. And 242 is empty once again, followed by 243, which is the beginning of yet another try. 244 once again sets the arguments to sys.argv and sets FTO to sys.argv1. I don't know why I did this. This is a terrible design choice, but it's too late to change it. I could change it, but that'd be admitting my mistakes, and I don't do that. Just kidding. And 246 accepts that 247 hasarg2 is false because line 248, if the string of platform.system is Windows, then the slash that we use is the backslash. And then on line 249, 250 is empty, even though that's a quarter of way to 1,000 lines. 251 is else, which assumes that you're not on Windows, and therefore your slash is the normal slash. 253 once again is empty. 254 is if the variable hasarg is true and xxx equals translate. This is going into the first command line argument switch of translate, which is the original one. 255, even though it's the 8-bit integer limit, is also empty. And I swear if I read down here and line 1000 is empty as well, I'm going to erase the empty line 1000 so it has something on it. Line 256 is a try statement. 257 tries to open the open file dir with the read switch. 258 sets the variable mess to the read of this. 259 prints absolutely nothing. 260 prints that the encoded message is whatever the length of the mess file is. 261, if that fails, it does 262 and 263, a message box that we could not. No, I'm going to fix this right now. And 264 is the else. So if it did go correctly, and 265, 266, 267, 268, 269, and 270 are all nested, replacing with my really, really good encoding thing. It's terrible. And 271 prints absolutely nothing again. 272 prints the translation of it. And 273 prints the size of the unencoded message. And 274 uses console asks, do you want to write this to a file? And if WT returned is yes in 275, then 276 is print what folder to save to. And 277 withdraws a tkinter window, and 278 sets variable fexx to be an ASC directory from file dialog. 279 prints what should the file name be, no extension needed. 280 asks for the user input, and 281 combines the file name with .txt. 282 is empty. 283 combines the full path with, 283 creates the full path of the files to be written to. 284 is a try statement. 285, that is, it attempts to open this fex file with X. 286 tries to write it. 287 tries to close it. 288 prints written to the file. If that fails, line 289, then it tries in 290 to open it with W. This is before I knew what W plus was, and I'm too lazy to go fix it now. 292 tries to write it. 293 closes it. 294 prints written to, followed by that file. 295 didn't accept if that nested thing went wrong, and at that point it gives up. 296, 297 has error could not write. Backing up 3 more tabs, it prints press enter to quit program. 299 is input, and 300 it does force kill and L. That concludes the first episode of this absolute snooze fest, coming out at 23 minutes and 15 seconds or so. And with that, thank you for watching, and if you're still awake, well, thank you for watching. Do pardon my horrible voice acting. Goodbye.